But he, like, about a year ago, my dad, he was like not feeling well, and so he's like, okay, I'm gonna walk it off, you know. And he was actually having a heart attack, which he thought he could walk off, because you can do that, right? But he was like, but he was so afraid of us seeing him as weak or vulnerable or just in a position where he couldn't look after us. And like, oh, I was like pissed, but it also absolutely broke my heart. And it really made me realize, you know, what I did to myself and what men go through with holding back those emotions. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, I'd like to start off by telling you a little bit more about myself. Some people know that I'm in third year, I'm in gender studies, I'm in con ed. Some people know I ran in an election. I'm a typical guy in a lot of ways. I've played hockey since I was 4 years old. I love sports. But there's some things here that I'd like to go through my identity that people might not know. I used to dance. I enjoy wearing the color pink. I like slow, sad, emotional music. I like to hug people all of the time. I like talking about my feelings. I like telling people how I feel every day. I think that mixed martial arts is marginally barbaric and I can't watch it. I am sex positive but not sexually driven when it comes to forming relationships. I'm a very proud feminist. I am in gender studies. I preach gender and sexual equity. I went to Lily's. I loved it and I cried. I write poetry and lyrics as therapy. I fundamentally don't believe in using the phrase "for the boys" as it does not apply to my life. I think happy faces in texts are cute and I have used the power to use them. When I used to work out, it was because it made me feel clear mentally and I don't lift a lot of weight. I'm entering the field of teaching, a currently female-dominated field. I train people about gender and sexual diversity. I talk openly about victim blaming, slut-shaming, and sexual violence. And I am a man comfortable with my own conception and construction of masculinity. These are all things that are not typically associated with being a man. But at the same time, I've never gone through these things and gone through the choices I made in my life or the way that I am and questioned the fact that I am a man. I'm very comfortable with my masculinity. And I know that I'm very lucky to have that peace and understanding with my own identity. But I think society is set up in a way in which a lot of people aren't. And I'd like to share with you a story about a 16-year-old boy who went to a high school 10 minutes from my home in Ottawa. And he was the only openly gay student in his public high school. And he was very stereotypical in a lot of the ways that he was flamboyant. And like, he loved unicorns and rainbows, and he was bullied a lot because no one really understood how to accept him. And society had set up, I guess, ways of thinking and talking to each other in which he wasn't accepted and he was bullied, to the point where he committed suicide. And I read about this in my first year, and I just couldn't shake it because I do want to teach. And I had the pleasure of going to a conference on education my first year. And I sat in on a workshop that was called Hate Hurts. And it was given by someone named Kelly Deere. If you ever have the chance to hear her speak, I highly recommend it. And one line that she said really stuck with me. She was telling a story of one of her students who had struggled with mental health because, again, they did not fit into the normal ways of masculinity. But a lot of that was outside the classroom, and they were bullied outside of the classroom, and she wasn't able to pick up on it. And eventually her student committed suicide. And what she said was, the suicide of one of your students is, as a teacher, your failure as a professional in a box below the ground. And that really stuck with me because as a teacher, the most important things you do on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion, is not teaching the curriculum and making sure that students understand how to spell the word cat and how to write their name properly. But rather that you make sure that you're checking in on your students and making sure that you create a space in which all of them feel safe to be themselves, in which ideas of masculinity don't make people feel that they're so marginalized that they don't even want to be a part of the world anymore. And I don't think that that's just a failure of a teacher. I think that obviously there are some students involved who are a part of that, but at the same time, where do those students get those ideas of masculinity and what's right and what's wrong? They get that from society. And so at the end of the day, when you hear stories about people like Jamie, that is not just on the teacher or the students, that's on all of us. because we are all kind of in this together. We're all in the same society, and we all, by ignoring these issues and not having these discussions, we allow people like Jamie to leave us without having the discussions that are necessary to make sure it doesn't happen again. So one thing I'd really like to get out of this talk today is to get out of this habit of classifying behaviors and traits as being masculine or feminine. So when we think of aggressive and we think of assertive, we classify those as being masculine. And when we think of emotional or empathetic, we think of those as being feminine. I think it's time that we start naming the behaviors and the traits that we're talking about rather than classifying them as being either masculine or feminine. Because when you have people like Jamie who don't fit into what we call masculine, they're going to start to feel like they're not enough. That they're not enough for their peers, they're not enough for their family, they're not enough for their society. Because they're not aggressive, because they are empathetic. They're feminine, but they're a man, so how can that be? And then so you start to internalize all these things because if you talk about them, then again, you're a sissy. And when you internalize these things and it builds up, it can become too much. And mental health and gender equity, I think, are two things that are completely linked together. And I can't help but thinking that if we stop classifying these behaviors and if we continue to have these discussions, maybe if we had these discussions 5-6 years ago, Jamie would still be here. And Jamie would be in his first year of university, and perhaps Jamie would be at Queen's, perhaps Jamie would be applying to be a Gale, and perhaps he would be the most fundamentally inspiring and fantastic leader for his peers, regardless of how gay or how feminine he is. And it's my hope that discussions like this will keep going, and that in future years and to come that people like Jamie won't have to think there's no way out.
Throughout the day, we've been talking about really the performance of masculinity, healthy masculinity and being who you are versus the toxic ideas of being a man that we're all striving to achieve. And so much of the themes have been around successfully performing masculinity. Whether that's, you think of that, some folks talked about the video game culture of kill and how we approach relationships and dating as if it's combat, so it's about getting kills and trophies, etc., right? And when you're a warrior and you're fighting, and the idea is to successfully be combative, the idea is to be the strong and silent type, right? This idea of just the stoic warrior that just gets things done and has no emotion. And I think of this story, and I'm going to bring up another Carlos story, a good friend of Kate and myself, Carlos Andres Gomez, this spoken word artist from New York. And he talks about being in a nightclub in Brooklyn. And you can imagine nightclub in Brooklyn, right? And he's had a great night, and he's like full of, just has had a beautiful night, and it's last call. Last call is this for men, it's a very vulnerable moment. It's a moment when you hear that word, last call, and you don't have a phone number, you're not going home with someone to fuck, you're a failure. You've struck out. So you quickly have to do something to prove that you're a man. That's why a lot of the fights happen that late at night, right? They gotta quickly assert that they're men. So Carlos is leaving the nightclub and he's had a good night, whatever, turns the corner and actually bumps into the chest of this other guy. I apologize for this language. But the guy pushes Carlos back like, bitch, what the fuck's your problem? And Carlos is just like, oh. And this guy's like screaming in his face and Carlos is like, oh, okay, I gotta fight this guy. So this guy's jacked up, ready to go, and Carlos is like, okay, trying to drum up some sort of, okay, all right, I'm mad, all right, I guess, right? And in that moment, he starts to think about friends he's lost in New York and people who've died in New York over something like a pair of shoes, right? And Carlos welled up and started to cry. And this guy jumps back as if Carlos pulled out a grenade. Like, whoa, all right, just chill, man, chill, release. And Carlos is like, what just happened here? We talked about how this guy ran from his tears. This guy ran from Carlos's tears as if he pulled out a grenade, right? So the fear of vulnerability and going there is so strong that it informs so much of what we do as men. And that's why I'm really thankful that you're, these courageous folks are here to talk about it, and we're going to hear from the experts out here as well. So, yeah.
awesome.
You're awesome.
You're awesome. I'm just gonna talk. I just wanna, just because you said you're awesome there. I just wanna go on that and say, love and expressing love and saying I love you. This has been, I think for a few guys, this has been something that has never been able to be done. This is expressing your vulnerability in its truest form, saying I love you, and using those words, and saying I care about you, and having those moments with your friends. Like, if you get a group of young kids together in grade 4, which I know the White Ribbon's done stuff like this, and that you ask them all, what is the thing that you hate most about being a boy versus being a girl? And you get their answers. The answers are stuff like, I can't tell my friends I care about them, or my friends don't tell me that they care about me. I can't be loving, and my favorite answer, and I think this is from your cover photo on Facebook, is I can't be a mother. And there's just so much behind that, unpacking that term, what the term be a mother is. It's being loving, it's being caring, it's cuddling, it's being affectionate, it's giving hugs. And this is something that I think the 3 men on this panel, and Kate as well, all of you guys are very affectionate, very caring men, which I think is such an admirable trait. I know we talked about the bro hug at the beginning, and how that is like, guys are so afraid of being seen as like gay, or they're being seen as being vulnerable and caring about somebody. So, what do you guys think about saying I love you? Are you guys cool with that?
Yeah. I've got a thing with my friends. One of them is here today, and I don't think I just want to be clear. I don't think it's a bad thing. Maybe it is, but it doesn't feel bad. But like we don't say I love you. We don't say like I like you. No, I like it's chill that we're buddies and all that. We will literally tell each other the worst things ever. We're like, dude, I don't care about your life, and if you died, it would mean nothing to me. And when I see him, I give him the finger. But I think, and it happens with a lot of my friends.
I don't know if I want to be
and I tell people, if I give you the finger, it means I really like you. And maybe it's some repressed thing, but I think everyone understands that it is just it's a code word. It's the same as saying I love you. When I say I hate you and you disgust me and I hate you so much, I hate everyone you know and therefore myself, I'm really saying, dude, you're cool, and I enjoy the fact that we're friends.
True.
And I don't think there's, I think a lot of things are being brought up today, and I think a lot of things are being brought up that are great, and I don't think we can talk down on anything. I don't think we can even talk down on things like pornography, because if something works for you, like you have no idea what's going on in someone else's life, so if something works for you and it is not intentionally directly hurting another person, I cannot see how that is a bad thing. If something is helping you out at all, I don't think that is something to be ashamed of.